Okay, thank you everybody for coming today. We're really happy to have you join us for what I hope is another session in during this Global Guidance Summit. So welcome everybody to Get Me Out of Here when international education is or isn't the right fit. Um, so we're going to kick things off and get started here. All right, so we're all going to introduce ourselves. My name is Maggie Cardosi. I am the regional manager for North America at University College Cork. I've been with University College Cork for 5 years, and then previous to that, I spent 6 years working for another Irish university. So altogether, I have about 11 years of professional experience working with students who want to study internationally. And then before that, I actually spent 2 different semesters studying in Ireland. So I also have, while it's a little bit dated, some experience as a student myself. But I'm going to pass it on to my other presenters to introduce themselves and also talk a little bit about their backgrounds and their experiences.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Keniston. I'm an admissions officer with University College Dublin and I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts. I attended UCD back in the day, a 4-year undergrad degree, so that's where a lot of my experience comes in, and I'm really excited to chat to you today about all the ins and outs of going abroad for college.
Hi everyone, my name is Cora Morrison and I'm the Senior Manager for North America for IU University. I'm based in New York, out of our office in New York City, and I've been with IE now, it's going to be nearly 11 years, but before I started working at IE, I was a little bit in the K through 12 space in Spain. Before that, I was in the government, and at IE, I also did a MBA program, so I'm also have some kind of experience studying abroad. I was living in Spain for 6 years as well. So really excited to chat with you today. Welcome.
Excellent. So I am going to take you through a couple of the things that we're going to talk about today. And this session is really rather than kind of a pitch as to why international education is something that a student might want to do, we want to talk a little bit about how to unpack when a student comes to you and says, get me out of here, or I really want to study outside of the United States for my degree. So we want to talk through, some questions that you might ask or some ways that you might frame a conversation around sussing out, if a student is going to be a right fit, if they're prepared on a few different levels to do a degree abroad. And then, we might have some time later to talk about what some alternate options might be. But we're going to go through some topics like academics, social and emotional readiness, cultural differences to keep in mind or think about, financial readiness, and then also the different supports that students may need to take advantage of and how they might function outside of the US. So we're going to run through this information quickly and leave a lot of time, we hope, for questions at the end. So feel free to pop those questions into the Q&A, and then we'll have some time to answer those once we finish up with the slides. But with that, I'm going to get started talking a little bit about academics. So what you might want to consider when you're speaking with a student who comes in and expresses an interest in doing a degree outside of the United States is talking to them a little bit about, whether or not they have a particular subject area in mind or, an overall kind of lane they want to stay in. A lot of programs overseas are very structured, would be direct entry programs. So there wouldn't be that kind of liberal arts or undecided entry point, although there are some. So if the student does prefer more flexibility, trying to suss out options that, might accommodate them, or at least finding out a little bit more about what it is that they want to study, and if, their intended destination can accommodate their need for maybe some flexibility. Also, when it comes to entry requirements, as you might have heard on other sessions during this week, entry requirements are pretty clear cut at many overseas institutions. So in many cases, like in Ireland, we'll use an example there. All the programs are direct entry, so there are very strict entry requirements with very specific sets of criteria that students need to fulfill. and whether that's testing or just particular subjects that they needed to have studied or GPA, something like that. So just kind of sussing out if that student meets those entry requirements for that program of study that they're interested in. And if that program of study does have particular subject tests or testing requirements, that student might have access to those exams and what to do, if maybe they do not. Another key point when considering institutions abroad is the student's learning style. Students, are they going to be more comfortable with a more independent learning environment and not necessarily larger class sizes per se, but when they're away from home, do they need kind of constant prompting from a parent or a teacher or a trusted counselor to get tasks done or assignments done, or are they pretty comfortable kind of getting their syllabus or whatever it is in the class and doing their work independently without all that prompting? So these are all questions that you can ask them, or ways that you can approach to kind of suss out if an actual degree program in and of itself is going to be a great fit for a student. So moving on.
Next, we're going to chat a little bit about some differences possibly, or questions that you may want to think about in terms of social and emotional side when it comes to speaking with students to try to determine if studying internationally would be a good fit. So I think this also goes a little bit in line with what Maggie was just saying in terms of independently, also what is the student's communication style? Are they able to self-advocate, or do they rely on a parent or a guardian? And of course, this is something that can also change, and it's something that students can learn. And many students, I feel like, also really appreciate kind of that next step, right? Coming outside of the home in many ways. I think a lot of times, also thinking about this, students, if they're going to be going outside of the home and studying, there's always going to be a change, no matter whether they're studying internationally or if they're studying at home, right? So that's something that is also kind of something to kind of think about for many students. But for example, are they a self-starter, or do they need a lot of help when it comes to completing different tasks? And also, has a student been away from home before? Have they had any sort of international experience, even just kind of traveling, or do they like to learn about different cultures, different people and everything, and how will they confront different feelings that they might feel, like, loneliness or maybe a little bit of homesickness. And so that's something also that might be good for that student to think about upfront as well. And then in terms of cultural differences, language is one, but I think definitely it's something to think about in terms of the student life and everything outside of campus also. But there are many programs, even in non-English speaking countries as well. So that is just kind of something to keep in mind. It's also an opportunity, if a student wants to learn another language, if they are studying an English language course, maybe they'll have an opportunity to also learn another language. But there are some students that would prefer that everything is in English, for example. If they go outside, everything is in English as well. So, that is definitely just another thing to think about and to kind of try to help prompt those questions with the students. And then also personal values and identity, do their values also align with their chosen destination? Do they feel like they're going to be able to cope in an area that may be a little bit maybe more or even less progressive or diverse in their current home, their current situations? Or is this something, even if it is very different, is it something that they would like to learn from as well and to kind of go outside their comfort zone? So these are all great questions, also for the student to think about to see if it could be a great fit. Next, I'm going to pass it to Sarah.
All right. We all love talking about finances when it comes to college. One of the perks of going abroad, and I'm sure one of the reasons why a lot of your students are looking into this option, is that the cost of attendance tends to be a lot lower than in the US. But with that, you still need to consider, cost of living. While food might be cheaper in their chosen country or city of choice, you also want to look at rent. You want to look at flights from your student city. If they're living in rural Kansas, you might just say, are you going to have to take 3 different planes to get to where you want to go? How long is that going to take? What's the cost of that going to look like? So there's a lot of pieces that go into it. It's absolutely not something to be afraid of, but just something to look at ahead of time. And then you want to look at the cost of attendance from your university tuition wise. We know that there have been some FAFSA changes recently. And so if students are relying on federal loans, we want to make sure that they can borrow the amount that they'll need to attend college, or have savings or something else as a placeholder in the meantime. Students' University of Choice offers scholarships. This is definitely something to look at earlier in the cycle. International schools tend to have different scholarships than you would see in the US. So get in touch early with your reps. Look for, some schools will have bigger scholarships. Some schools will assess your application on the first read to let your student know if they've received any scholarships in that regard. So definitely look into that early and get your head in the game there. And can the student work legally while abroad? I would say almost all of the AIRR-NA member institutions, I believe almost every country, the students are allowed to work while they're there. Usually it's a reduced number of hours during the term and more hours outside of term. So if your students are interested in a summer internship, that should be absolutely feasible in the country that they're looking at. But you want to look at the whole photo of finances while you're just considering this option. And health disability services and other supports. All of our schools, I think, really pride ourselves on having these supports for students, but it's not always handed to you in the same way that it would look like in the US. So sometimes you have to reach out first, or your student will need to reach out and say, hey, I have this diagnosis, this is the accommodation that I need, whatever that may look like. We all really want to be accessible for our students and make sure that whether it's a physical need or a mental health need, try to support them in that way, but we can't help you if we don't know. So let your reps know. We can get you in contact with the right services. One of the things is medications. Look at if your student has a medication that they might be worried about transferring over to another country, definitely just look at the legality of it. I know there's a lot of things nowadays that don't transfer over. Make sure that they can get that prescribed in their country of choice or bring it over in maybe a 90-day supply from the US. But either way, we're here to support you, and this is one piece of the puzzle, but let us know early so that we can get you in touch with the right people and sort that all out.
That's right. So those are the end of our content slides. But before we move into questions, we just wanted to really quickly and shamelessly plug some more AIRR-NA events that you can engage with us on, because we're always happy to speak with you and answer more questions. So we're all many of us are going to be at NACAC this year in Columbus. We're going to have a conference reception. So please reach out to learn more about that. We'll also be headed to Texas, the East Coast, and the West Coast between November of this year and February of 2026. So if you are in any of those areas, keep your eyes peeled for us. But with that, we're going to move over to the Q&A. So we have how much time left? A little more than 10 minutes. So hopefully we can get to those questions there. Cora, do you want to have been keeping an eye on that?
Cool. I'll kick us off here. So we did receive a question. I think maybe we could even touch on this a little bit, each of us if you want. But there is a question about how do we prepare US students for different legal systems and so that they feel like they are guests in our country. So things like pre-departure sessions and things like that. I don't know, Maggie, did you want to, or do you want each of us to kind of jump in and kind of answer it, or?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit. I mean, I
Sure.
actually just jumped off a pre-departure session before we came into this session. I think, one thing to consider is kind of like the mindset of a student during the summer before they're headed off to university, and, thinking about what their peers are doing with US universities. And oftentimes it doesn't look exactly the same, but the content that we are, bringing to them, likely virtually, is going to be very, very similar. It might not work on the same timetable. So for example, in Ireland, well, as much as we would really, really love to be getting information about registration and, signing up for classes out to the students in June, we don't do that until right about now. So around late August, early September. So that said, we communicate with our students really from the point of application to acceptance, and then throughout the summer of all the different opportunities that they can take to learn more about the country that they're about to make their home for the next 3, 4, plus years. So whether that's educating them around, how to register for classes, how to find accommodation, also the different, health and student support services around, those are the different types of sessions that we would run, throughout the summer, or different topics that we would be more than happy to bring up in one-to-one conversations.
Yeah, and I think also, throughout the year, of course, there are a lot of different things that can depend a lot on the different universities as well. Some do sessions about visas, student housing, and then a lot of universities will also have something kind of similar to a freshers week, right? So once someone has arrived on campus, that they'll also have that first week or so to kind of get acquainted with everything, understand where everything is. But I feel like in terms of support services, the universities, for the most part, there's a lot of different options and a lot of things that are happening, even if it is virtual. There could be some things also in person as well. And I think there's also a question more well, actually, I don't know, Sarah, if you wanted to add anything to the last question. Did you want to before we move
Yeah,
to the next?
I would always say my favorite fun fact about going to school abroad is that seniors in the UK and Ireland are only finding out where they're going to college today and tomorrow. So if you feel like you're behind, trust me, you're not. You can very rarely be behind when they're only getting their decisions in the last week of August. So don't worry, your students don't need to worry. I know it's easier said than done, but just so that everyone's aware. Um, and then I can feed into the next question as well. Nuance on student summer work. Can a student in Ireland have a summer job in the UK or EU? And can a student in the UK/Scotland work in the Republic of Ireland? My experience with this is no, your visa or your Irish residence permit, wherever you are, you'll have a different permission, will only entitle you to work in that country. I don't know if Cora and Maggie, you have further information on that.
Yeah, I mean, unless the student themselves also had like EU or UK citizenship, their ability to legally work would be limited to the country that their university is in. So in the case of the question, Ireland.
Okay. I think there's another question here. It says some colleges in the US have fee-based support, such as executive functioning coaching or social support for autism students. Do you know if there are similar programs available at some institutions?
There are. So in the university that I work for, and I would guess that this would be mirrored similarly at other universities, both in Ireland and elsewhere. There are many different supports that students can take advantage of. That kind of runs through our careers offices or the skills center in UCC. So the careers office kind of jumps in from the first day of classes for first years with opportunities of things like how to create a resume or how to present yourself in interviews, things like that, which can be helpful right then and there, but also will come in handy down the line when students are seeking full-time employment after they graduate. Also, we have lots of things like writing support, some math support, I think, other skills like that. There are also lots of free classes available to not just students, but anybody in the university around upskilling, around like getting a digital badge in sustainability or project management, things like that. So, and those are advertised a little bit more when the students would get to campus, but it's all free and it's all part of the experience. So it's a really good way also, not just to upskill, but also get involved.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, I know that there are some universities that will have like a mentoring program or sort of a buddy program. For example, we connect students that are in usually like their third or fourth year with incoming students. And so those students have the opportunity to also have kind of like someone who's already on campus and a student to kind of help show them the ropes, if you will, and kind of have someone to talk to and to learn, okay, maybe I don't want to ask my advisor, where do I buy something like, I don't know, things for the kitchen, that kind of thing. So the buddies and the mentoring programs are also a really great resource.
I'd say peer mentoring is huge across
Mhm.
campuses in Europe and outside of the United States, as they would be in the United States too.
I don't know. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
And I just wanted to add too, so, we've talked a lot about kind of sussing out questions to ask or topics to broach when, talking to a student who's expressed an interest in going abroad and trying to kind of see where they're coming from and if the situation, if they're going to be a right fit or if they need to look at other options. So maybe we can talk about what those other options are, just before we wrap up. What I do want to say is that, if a student really wants to go abroad, but the pieces are just not lining up for them, and it would make better sense for them to stick around, in the United States or Canada, wherever you're from. Um, that doesn't mean that their journey, that they can't have a journey abroad at all. So the universities that, or the university I work for, and many others that are part of the AIRR-NA membership, also would host visiting students. So like your traditional like semester or year abroad. So that's something, a student can get a year or two of university under their belt and then do a temporary program abroad. We also, many of us offer graduate programs. So that's another idea. So there are lots of different things that students can look to in the future if maybe the best fit for them is to stick around closer to home.
Definitely.
Um, yeah, is there anything else you guys want to add to that?
Um, I think maybe another thing, maybe thinking about ways for students to think about, if studying internationally is a great fit for them. A lot of us also have summer programs for high schoolers. So, maybe that's also an option that a student might want to explore in terms of, can I see myself there on campus? Can I see myself living in that country? Is maybe test out one of our shorter programs, summer programs. Some have other certificates or different types of kind of like weekend programs as well. So yeah, that could be another option.
Absolutely. I would just echo the fact that the door is never shut. Even if you do your undergrad and do your master's, you can always look for more opportunities to get out there and explore the world. So, yeah, the door is always open.
That's right. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left before time, but I think we might wrap up here. Cora or Sarah, do you have any kind of like final thoughts that you'd like to leave the group with before we let everybody go?
Yeah, I'll start. I would just say that your typical student that goes abroad, there's no right mold. So it could be a really outgoing, sporty student. It could be a really quiet student that maybe you haven't heard a lot from over the past few years. Either one could fit in seamlessly at one of our institutions. So definitely, keep your mind open as well. They'll need to very much keep their minds open, but they can approach you and look very different. So there's a lot of different characters that show up on campus, which is something that makes university abroad really, really special.
Yeah, no, I really love that, Sarah. And I think that also, I really think that for a student to have some sort of international experience, even if it's not ending up to go do their bachelor program, is really valuable and is really, really important also, not only for their personal kind of growth and development, but also for future careers. So I always like to also kind of see with a student, what they're interested in and then kind of align that also with that. But I think that yeah, just having some sort of an international experience, whether it is a summer program or a semester abroad, all the way up to a full maybe bachelor or master program, definitely students, it's amazing that students are open to it and highly support it.
Excellent. And I would just wrap up by saying that we are here as a resource for you. So anything that we can do to help you or your students, there's no silly question. We've heard a lot. We've experienced a lot, all of us in our educational journeys. So we're happy to help you. And I think I maybe speak for all three of us when I say that for myself, being able to kind of introduce the idea of going abroad or helping a student on their journey is really valuable. I really get a lot from it because I see that little bit of me in that student, and I really enjoy being that person for those students that maybe was around to help me when I was looking at my options abroad. So we're here for you. We have lots of opportunities and resources to help get you started and get your students started on their journeys abroad. So do not hesitate to reach out. Um, So with that, that's time. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm sure you've listened in on other sessions during this Global Guidance Summit. So thank you for being with us this week. And hopefully you stick around for the next session, which I might see you at. So yeah, thanks again. And we hope to see you soon.